I like keeping these on YouTube. I feel like it's gonna be cool to go back and see them like once it's all done. Because our creator convo ones are on YouTube right now. Um, so it'll be like a nice little quarantine series once this is all
Like
done.
that.
Let me see if this actually went through. Okay, we good. We're good. We're good. We're good. True. Okay. No, this will be fun, man. This will be fun. Do you foresee yourself working on another book?
I do. Um, I actually I'm not even supposed to really say this, but I'll say it anyway. Because I actually wrote two children's books.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I remember you talking about that.
yeah, and so I haven't begun illustration yet, but that's something that I really I started getting into. Really passionate about it actually. Um, just like affecting the youth, kind of the
Yeah,
younger generation, and giving them like African American features to look at. So I definitely see myself working on more.
that's
About
so
yourself?
important. Because I remember we had talked about that the one time, like
Yeah,
um, just the whole representation thing, especially for young kids,
yeah,
like the young TV shows or
exactly.
books, like influencing them at a young age. I feel like is important, even more important than like when you're in high school or when you're in college. You know?
Extremely. Like I especially in these times that we live in now, I feel like more than ever, especially little black boys, little black girls, little minorities in general just need some form of representation and something they can grasp and understand.
Yeah,
Like
that's a fact. That's
you
a
know,
fact.
so I'm excited about it. Well, how about yourself?
Um, I don't know. I mean,
It's a process.
I would say I would say no, but at the same time, I also said no before
Yeah.
doing the last one. Like, um, I was not planning on writing another book.
Mm,
And then, like, just when the time comes, and when you just have like stuff in your mind you want to say. So, but I have been thinking about like doing another one, but just a completely different vibe. Like, I would want it to be more like I don't know, like a short experience with like more media in it, like
mm.
with art intensive and maybe like a devotional book or something like that.
That's nice.
More like just something you could do as like a daily mental
Yeah.
guide type of thing, more so than like a book.
I mean, look, you've lived an eventful life thus far. You know, so it's like
What about you?
you got so much life left in you. Like I know you're gonna writing something else, man. Who knows what's gonna happen in the next 10 years or so.
That's true. That's true. Hopefully this is just the beginning for both of us.
Hopefully, books, man, maybe TV, movies, like,
All of that.
you know,
All of that.
the sky's one. I feel like once you get that first book, at least for me, it's my first, but usually a third, but like once you get it under your belt, like you just feel like writing more, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I agree.
you will get a lot more creative. I never thought I'd be a writer, that's for sure. When I was a kid,
Look at you now, boy.
I hated reading, man. Hated it. It was awful.
Yo, I'm getting excited too. People are joining, so that's dope. To everybody that's joining, what's up? Hope you guys are doing well.
What's up?
We're just, I mean, we are kind of just talking before we actually get started. We'll probably start around 6:05. Give some people
Yeah.
time to find the link, get on. You know how technology is. So hang with us for a little bit. But thanks for joining. It's going to be a fun convo. Brandon's going to have a lot of really good stuff to say, right, Brandon?
Yeah, I'm gonna try. Okay.
All
I
right.
got I got a lot. I got a lot to get off my mind. A lot to say. So I'm excited to share my thoughts with you guys and hear you guys' questions and help you guys. Any way you need help.
Man, my grandma is calling. I feel bad. It's her birthday. I called her right before this to tell her happy birthday.
Did she join?
We're on live. Did she join?
Yeah.
I don't even know if my grandma knows what Zoom is, bro.
You're a baby boy, man. You gotta get her on the call. It's her birthday, right?
Cool, cool. People are joining. Thanks for joining, everybody. We're gonna give it a few more minutes. 6:05. Um, so for anybody who's on right now, just before we get started, we have some questions that we'll run through, but we really just wanted to have a discussion. Um, really for any questions you guys have, most importantly. So if you have any questions, we got two ways you can ask them. in the comment section or in the chat. You can put your questions down there. We'll be watching it, and we'll be answering those questions. Or if you, I think it'd also be dope if we have people say their question themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you press the raise hand button, I think it's under like the participants section, and you click raise hand, then we can call on you. We can unmute your mic, and we would love to have some people in here on the convo with us. So
Keep this as interactive as possible. You
for
feel me?
sure.
Like we love talking to people. I love talking to people. So like don't be shy or nervous or anything like that. Like come open, ask anything. Um we're here to help you guys, get through this process.
Yeah, I think it's been dope. I mean, before we get into the real questions, I think it's been dope seeing um, a lot of people interested in just writing in general. Like, I think at first we thought this wouldn't be a topic people would be interested in, but a lot of people have actually been, hitting me up, and I'm sure the same with you, saying
Yeah,
like, "Oh, I have an idea," or "I would be interested in writing a book eventually." It's just kind of confusing sometimes knowing where to start.
of course. That's what we're here for, man. Because I mean, I know for damn sure I was in that same position not too long ago. Having an idea and not knowing what the hell I was gonna do. So
Thanks.
it's nice to be able to help other people get through that milestone. You know, I'm
Yeah,
excited.
Brandon, man, so inspirational.
No, that's you, Jay. That's JP Will. JP Will 23. Everyone knows you. They don't know me. You
Brandon
feel?
Moore. Okay, what you say? Like 3 more minutes and we can start?
That's cool. That's cool. I'm chilling. Hope everyone had a good day. I don't know what day it is anymore.
Bro, I
Thursday?
really don't. Ever since school ended,
Man,
I don't know what's going on.
you know what? Matter of fact, if anyone knows any good barbers in Jersey, please put that message in the. My hair has been rough for the past 3 months. I got no cut. Excuse the hat.
Hey, Brandon, before we actually start, why don't you take your hat off and let us see how your hair looks?
I'd rather not. Yeah, I'd rather not.
Maybe it'll provide people some inspiration for what we can write on.
If they cash at me, sure. I ain't showing this. I ain't showing this.
The way you think, man.
I look homeless, man. Man, oh man.
It's been like, I think it's been 2 months since I got a haircut.
It's been insane, man. Like I don't want to leave the house anymore. I just go work out and come home.
Not the same, man. It's not the
You know,
same.
I've been chilling.
And that's just out the door. You know what I'm saying?
I know if I knew I went outside be the last time, I would have done it differently.
Tell me about it.
Get some Chick-fil-A or something. Like I don't know, man.
Honestly, to be honest, I think this session could even become a series later on, like,
Publishing?
or like, I think it could definitely be broken up into like a series of chat. I mean, because we had talked about wanting to do live events in person and stuff.
Yeah,
I feel like, I mean, because it's a lot of different segments in the process you could talk about.
yeah, absolutely.
I feel like it could be broken up into more succinct
Yeah,
sections of the process. Like, I think this would be cool just to,
like an overview.
yeah, hit the overview, hit any like specific topics that we struggled through in it. But I mean, there's definitely a lot to talk about
Definitely.
that could go beyond, a 1 hour talk.
I can talk for hours about this because this was a process and a half.
Yeah.
Process and a half. I won't talk for hours, but I could.
We'll give people 1 more minute and then we'll go ahead and jump in. Actually, it's 6:05, so you want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, I'm gonna stop the screen share. So, what's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us. Excited to get started on this. My name is Jordan Williams. I'm here with my business partner, my friend, my brother, Brandon Moore.
Stop.
Thanks for registering and signing up. We're excited for this topic, self-publishing one-on-one. We have had a lot of people, to be honest, reaching out the past few months, just asking different questions about writing a book, about publishing a book, promoting a book, whatever it may be. So we really just wanted to come on here, bored at the house, have a little conversation about the process, talk to any of you guys that may have questions, writing your own books, working on your own book process. So hopefully this will be a way we can add a little bit of value and have a fun convo at the same time. So maybe Brandon, we can just start off by talking about um, the books that we've currently been working on right now. So you want to talk about yours first?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So hey guys, I'm Brandon. Like you said, I've been partners with Jordan for the past 2, 3 years now. When we started Ed Corp a few years ago, going to my 5th year at Northeastern University. And my book is entitled A New Lane. So for those of you who don't know me, I currently run track and field at Northeastern University. Um, Prior to entering college, my entire life was centered around athletics, as many people are, especially track and field. I thought that my purpose was to run track and field and that I would change the world through athletics. That was how I was brought up, the environment I was in. And so my mindset was all athletics all the time. The end of my senior year of high school, I tore my quad in a race in high school. Um, the quad ended up detaching from my thigh, rolling up my leg, and dying in my thigh. So I have like a really big ball in my thigh. It's really nasty. And so when I went through that injury, I w- I went through an identity crisis when I entered college because I believed my sole purpose was athletics, right? And I would change the world through athletics, but my body wasn't the same anymore. I couldn't run the same anymore. I couldn't compete the same anymore. I was no longer the same Brandon that I used to be and that I
Mm.
thought I was. So I went through this huge identity crisis for my first 2 years of college, no longer knowing who I was and what my purpose was. And this led to a huge downward spiral um, where I went through depression. Um, I was suicidal at one point in my life. It was just I was at the absolute lowest point in my life in college, and just going through a huge mental breakdown and a lot of mental hurdles. And one night, while I'm laying in the hospital bed, I had an epiphany, and I realized that I didn't want to live my life that way anymore. I I knew I had more to contribute to the world than just my athletic ability. And from there, um, we started Yet Corp, our national nonprofit organization. I started a few other businesses around school, around my school campus. I started mentoring people, and I really found my purpose in entrepreneurship. And so my book is about my journey from student athlete to student entrepreneur, um, how other college students can, bounce back. I know a bunch of college students go through mental battles they don't want to share with other people. So it's a really interactive guide for you to identify what your battles are, how to overcome them, how to pivot, and how to come out stronger than ever and find your true passion in the world. So that's my book, A New Lane.
I love it. I love it. I just got my copy in the mail. Thanks for that. Can't wait to
You're
read
welcome.
that. I'm excited.
Well, please
Um,
tell us what you got going on with your book.
yeah, so like I said before, my name is Jordan Williams. I've known Brandon for a few years now. We worked together on Yet Corp, Youth Entrepreneurs Diversity Corporation. So it's been a blessing to know Brandon and work with him. Last fall, I published my book called Breaking the System, and basically this book is sort of about how you can find your unique path and lane whenever you're working and living within structured systems. And in life, I feel like that those systems can be a variety of things, whether it's corporate America, whether it's your school environment, your family environment. A lot of systems that we live in have a status quo, they have a standard way of doing things. And I think that at times we sort of fall into just doing what seems like the rest of the system does, or what everybody else and around us tells us is the right thing to do. But I think that this book has been a resource to try to help other people realize that they can provide more value to the system, and the people coming after them if they're willing to fearlessly challenge it, and if they're willing to find their unique route and not just feel like they have to do what the status quo says. So that's what my book is about. So I'm excited to get to chat with you, Brandon, and go through a few topics. Like we had said before, I just want to say again, now that more people are getting on, we have a few questions and topics that we're going to go through. But to be honest, we really did this to hear from you guys and to hear any questions you have. So if you have any questions, please ask them. You can type them in the chat. You can click the raise hand button on participants page and we can unmute you. We would love to hear your voice and have you
Absolutely.
ask it yourself. But yeah, definitely ask any questions. We'll try to provide whatever value we can. But Brandon, I'm gonna start off by slinging this first question at you.
Cool.
So, for your book, how did you get the idea for the book? How did that come together in the beginning?
Yeah. So my book was it came from life experiences. And I get that question a lot from a lot of people asking, how did you get your idea for your book? How do I get an idea for a book? I want to write a book, but I don't know what to write about. And before I get into why I wrote my book, I just want to say that you don't search for a reason to write a book. You know, the reason you want to write a book is from daily experiences, things that have gone on in your life over a period of time, and you've realized that, and you realize there's a message that you can cultivate and share to the world. Um, so when you're thinking about wanting to write a book, what's your why? What's your reason? Right. So my reason is, like I said, I was a student athlete who went through a horrific injury. I dealt with a lot of mental hurdles while in college, depression, suicide, what have you. And after I was able to overcome all these obstacles, I went back and I realized there are millions of other college students who go through mental battles while in college, student athletes or not. There are millions of other college students who lose their sense of identity, don't know who they are, don't know what they want to do with their lives, and they struggle to convey those messages and open up about it. And so I saw my experience, my brush with death, and overcoming all of that as an opportunity to share my story with those who were too afraid to share their own.
Mm,
Um, and in me sharing my story, it was also a way for me to cope with
true,
um,
true.
kind of like my inner thoughts and everything I was going through. I was able to, instead of having to talk to someone about it, I could just write my thoughts out on paper, and it came out so much easier. So my motivation was definitely from my life experiences and knowing that I had a message and a story that would help hundreds of other students and people across the world.
That's yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. And honestly, I feel like it was the same for me. I feel like there's always a point usually, and it depends on I guess what type of book you're writing and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But I think for a lot of people interested in writing a book, there's a point where you realize that like the thing you're going through, a lot of other people probably go through as well. And
Yeah.
I think that's like at least for me was one of the inspirations for wanting to write a book was that I felt like other people could resonate with the message and maybe it could provide some more, value to other people in that realm. So like I would say like similar to what you had said, my fall semester of my junior year was just a rough semester. And writing for me was a way to have a little bit of that therapeutic experience to like work through some of the things that had been on my mind that were just bothering me. And when I went home during Christmas break, I was talking to some of my other friends, talking to you, talking to some of my friends in Atlanta, and they were telling me their current situations that was really very similar to what I was, dealing with at school. And that was kind of my prompt, like, okay, maybe this is just a good time to share your story because you never know who it could impact and who it could help. So I definitely agree with what you said.
Cool. So then on that note, going off of that, like what was your motivation behind wanting to finally come out and, share that information to the world in the form of a book?
So I think like definitely one thing I thought about was the emphasis on the part of the question where you said why the form of the book, because at first like I felt like there was this message I wanted to talk about, but I didn't know what the right format to do it was.
Mhm.
So there was a process where I was trying to figure out what's the right platform or way to convey this message, and that's something I kind of deal with a lot. So initially the idea was to share this message through like a screenplay. So I was like um, trying to put together a short film that I thought would convey this in an interesting manner. Like my sister um, is into TV and writing screenplays and stuff like that. So seeing the work that she was doing, I've kind of been interested in getting into
Yeah.
that realm as well. So I did it. I was writing the screenplay and stuff like that, um, or writing the script. But I just felt like right now, at the point where I am right now, with the resources I have, with the things I know, in that field, I was a little limited to like really provide value in that avenue the way I wanted to. So I think it was honestly like a little period of adjusting to be like, okay, right now might not be the right time to do the short film. I'm gonna put it on the back burner for a little bit. But until then, maybe, writing a book or writing, some other like blog post, something like that may be a good way to resonate with people, you know, with what I can do now. So I think the emphasis was just taking that analysis of where am I now, what are my resources, like what are my skills, and what can I do now, and we can build on that in the future and
Absolutely.
go later. But let's start with where I can right now.
Yeah. And it sounds like being realistic with yourself, right? Like
Yeah,
on
right,
the screenplay, but knowing what your limited resources, you could put out a book, and it
right.
could be a lot better than trying to scramble together other resources.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's something that that has been. We've talked about that
Yeah,
our conversation. That's something that's helpful. Another thing we've talked about is like the whole idea of finding time to write in general, or like just finding that writing schedule.
yeah,
So I feel like for us, maybe it's a little different. Maybe our schedule differs differs from each
yeah.
other because you're a student athlete. That's a whole nother thing in of itself. So what did your writing schedule look like?
Man,
How do you
let me
like
tell
on
you.
top of that, how do you remain disciplined within the writing schedule when you make it?
Let me tell you, man. And for anyone listening, it's hard. It's hard getting a writing schedule together is difficult, but it goes hand in hand with discipline.
True.
So when I decided to write my book, it was like June. I had an apartment. I was living in Boston doing an internship. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stop putting this on the back burner. I'm gonna finally take this seriously and go to work. So I literally would sit down, at my table each week, and I tell myself I'm gonna write a chapter a week. And that's what I did. I sat down every night. I'm a night writer too, and we talked about that. Kind of knowing what you're good at. Some people are like writing in the morning. Some people are better at writing at night. Me and you, I think me and you both are kind of night people. Like
Yeah.
we could stay up all night and just write, write, write. And so my writing schedule consisted of me literally going to work, working out, coming home, then for the remainder of the night till maybe 12, 1 in the morning, I'm just writing, working on my chapter. Um, and I was disciplined enough to be able to do it each week until I had a full draft of my book.
Right.
You feel me? What about you?
No, I would agree. So first of all, I agree that I'm definitely someone who rather write at night.
Yeah,
I just feel like during the day, my mind is to be honest, my day is focused on a lot of different things, especially during the school year, like going from class to class. I'm thinking about assignments, whatever it may be. So I feel like at night, it's just a time where, most things are done,
yeah,
kind of focus more. The big thing for me, I think, discipline wise, was just having a set writing time
mhm,
and having a set writing place. I think it's
yeah,
huge. So, like, my writing time typically actually would be on the weekends, like during the school year. So, on like Saturdays was like the main day for me. And the writing place was the computer lab. I was living like on campus. There was a
yeah,
computer lab in the dorm, and people wouldn't really be in there a lot. So usually at nights, especially on the weekends, I would just go to the computer lab, you know, turn my phone off, leave my phone in the room. And this is just that specific time to be like, okay, let's outline, let's work through some thoughts,
yeah,
um, just undistracted with nothing else, not focusing on anything else, not having your social media buzzing and stuff like that. And like you said, I think having that set writing time, whether it's at night, whether it's on the weekends, whatever it may be, gives you time leading up to that to sort of think through stuff as you're going through the day. So like I would say while I was going to class during the day or, hanging with friends, I'm still thinking on those topics and sort of putting stuff together, like putting things together mentally. And then once I get to that writing time in the computer lab, it's like, okay, now let's let it all out. Let's put it on paper. You know what I'm saying?
I think another point off of that is, like you said, you write on the weekends, right? And I did the same
Right.
thing when the school year started. But it's having the discipline to prioritize putting your book first. And on that note, I'm talking about like especially you're in college, you got the parties, you got the clubs, you got all this outside noise that can distract you and deter you from, getting the job done.
True.
Um, and there were many weekends I had to, all my friends are going out clubbing to the party, whatever, and I'm like, I can't go because I got to edit 50 pages on my book to get it done on time. So I think, especially over like winter break, I mean, every night I'm in my kitchen, home, banging out revision after revision. While all my friends are doing God knows what. So it's like having that discipline to tell yourself, all right, whatever, I'm staying in and I'm gonna get this done because it's important to me. If it's really important to you, you're gonna put it first over, hanging out with your friends,
Yeah.
partying, whatever. And if you have supportive friends, they're going to understand that this is something important to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big one. That's a big one.
Absolutely, man.
So I have another question for you, but I saw Taylor just put a great question in the chat, so I want to hit that one. And to anybody else that may be watching right now, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments in the chat or click the raise hand button. We'd love to unmute you, have you, answer it and have a little dialogue. But Taylor said, how did each of you combat writer's block, if that was an obstacle during your individual process? I think that's a great question.
You want to start?
I'll let you start, Mr.
All right.
Go ahead.
Writer's block. So I'd say in my case, it was a little easier writing just because it was my story.
Okay.
But I'd say to start, before you even start writing your book, right? You put together a whole just detailed plan about what you want to write about. So for me, I just thought about, all right, what do I want to write about? What happened in my life that I want to put down on paper? And I just started jotting idea after idea after idea. And so when it came to writing my book, I already had this sheet of paper out. So whenever I would, I'm at my computer and I can't think, right? I just go to this sheet of paper where I already jotted down, this whole 4 pages, just random notes. I go to the page and I see, all right, I want to talk about this now, and I'm good to go. So I think having that sheet of paper already printed out for you, taking notes down before you even start writing the book, will be extremely helpful for you when writer's block comes, because you'll have something out there already, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. The only thing I would add is like I think there's moments where you at least have to come into the space, like the writing space, and try to work through it. And I think that
Okay.
sometimes I think that one of the most satisfying feelings is sort of having a cloudy mind, but coming to the computer, coming on paper, and being able to like write your way through it. And sometimes that doesn't even look like complete sentences.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think it just looks like doodling on a paper, writing stuff here and there, and making arrows. Like
Yeah.
that's what it looks like for me until things sort of connect, or until that inspiration comes. And then at the same time, I think that there's moments where you just have to learn when to go to sleep or
Yeah.
just walk away. I think
And
there's a lot of times when I've been in the
yeah,
computer lab having like writer's block, not knowing, you know, how to complete a thought, not knowing how to really express the feeling in words. And you just come to a conclusion like, you know what? It would be better for me to leave now, like go do something else more productive, go to sleep. Sometimes is the thing
yeah,
that's most productive. Um, and or even just go to different places, whatever it may be, to get that inspiration,
exactly.
just talking to somebody else. Like I might call you to just talk and
Yeah,
try to get inspiration, try to work through things. But I think that you have to know, you have to try to work through it, but not force it.
don't force it.
And
Yeah,
know when to be like, okay, let's take a break. Let's go get some inspiration, and we'll come back and try again. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So Taylor, thank you for that question.
That's a
Um,
good one.
so I think it's Isaiah. Isaiah was just raised his hand. So Isaiah, we're gonna come to you. Let's see if this works. Let us know if you can hear us, Isaiah.
I can hear you.
Hey, what's up, man? How's it going?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. And is it Mr. Brennan? How do you pronounce your last name?
It's more. Yeah, I know there's a little R at the end.
More. Yeah. Well, thank you for letting me in. I know it was last moment to get into this meeting, but I am working on a book, and I had a question for down the line. I mean, what was the whole process of like getting your book written and drafted, the editing process, but then finding like a cover, because now you have to brand it. So what was the process of like finding a cover and then using social media accounts to brand it, while, you know, like not throwing it on someone, but
Yeah.
kind of making it at least tantalizing or attractive for someone to, you know, read your material?
So Jordan and I have two extremely different approaches to how we went about like the cover of our books. Jordan's a creative one, like for all of our businesses. He draws up everything. If I need something done, I go to him. I outsource it because I can't draw for crap. So I just kind of outsourced. I had an idea in my head of what I wanted the cover to look like, but I couldn't draw it or do anything like that. And so it really came down to me just reaching out to people, and they all referred extremely talented individuals to me. And I worked with two editors. They both, you know, I got the first draft from one editor, and it didn't. I asked people around, like, what do you think? They're like, it doesn't look like you. You know, it could be any guy, it could be any black guy. Like, it's your story. It should be you there. So I went to my second editor with the revisions, and she made a cover that it's tailored to look like me. When you see the cover, you think of Brandon, and that's what I really liked. So outsourcing for me worked really well. But Jordan, you had a different approach.
Yeah. So first of all, I think that's a great question. Thanks for the question.
Yeah.
And so I think it's perfect because the whole editing process was something that we were planning to cover in this if nobody asked. But so in terms of the editing and finding an editor, I think that me and Brandon's process with that was pretty similar. We both went to, so there's this website called Fiverr, FIVRR.com, I think. And that's the source we both use to find someone who, you know, is legitimate, who has a proven track record of editing other books, and we were able to see some of their work. But at the same time, it wasn't ridiculously priced because
Yeah.
I've reached out to some editors that I've just found online, and the price, you wouldn't believe the prices from.
Let's try $1,500 for an edit. Don't use it.
I've gotten charged up to 10,000, bro.
Yeah.
For editing services and more, just depending on, you know, the how in depth it's going to be and how many pages your writing is. So I thought for our work that we did, I think Fiverr was a really good resource to find people who could be trusted but could also work pretty fast and for a reasonable price. So I think that's a good place to start looking for editors at least. In terms of graphic design, so like Brandon said, we have a little bit of different steps we took in terms of that process. So for me, I had an idea for where I wanted to go visually with the design, and I kind of just wanted to be able to control that process. So, but at the same time, I think the big thing for me was having that vision, but number one, getting feedback from trusted people about the design and the visual along the way, and then two, being able to be flexible with the vision and adapt if it didn't turn out as planned. So my process was sort of starting with the core themes at throughout the book, which for me the main one was like freedom, you know, identity, purpose, things like that, and then finding some symbols, visual, you know, symbols that I thought could embody that on the cover. So at first I thought it was going to be an eagle, that like my first designs were sort of centered around that theme and that visual. And I was going to print it with that. And then one day I was like, nah, I'm not really feeling it. Scratch that. And then it got to the cover that it is today with, you know, people kind of being, I forget what it's called, but
puppeteering.
Yeah, the puppeteers. But for me, it was really, you know, still collaborating with people to see their advice, but I was just using Photoshop, you know, using Google for information on formatting, stuff like that. But I think what Brandon said is important, just knowing what you want to get from it, knowing whether you want to control the process or whether you want to, you know, collaborate with someone else who might give you some new ideas and feed some new energy into you. And then so in terms of the part of your question where you had asked post publishing,
yeah, social media posts and everything like that. Yeah,
I think that's a big thing, and we'll get into it more a little later.
Okay, yeah.
We have another point, but I think I would say for us, probably social media has probably been the biggest thing, Brandon, in
Yeah.
terms of marketing. I think my vision has always been social media and, combining that with in-person events and touch. Me and Brandon, whether it's like the YED events or the book publishing stuff, we're big on, people being able to feel your energy in person, because I don't think you can ever recreate that or match that. So whatever that experience is for us, it was doing launch events,
Yeah.
inviting our family and friends, um, and then also having, social media campaigns to get your friends to share, to, collaborate with other authors. Low key, what we're doing right now, these type of events, just to get um, more people knowing about your brand and things like that. But I would definitely say whenever there's an opportunity to do in-person events and just have that personal touch with people,
Yeah.
there's nothing that can replace that.
Yeah. In person is such a different experience. People can really feel your passion for the project, and it sells.
Yeah, 100%. Does that answer the question at all? Anything else we
Absolutely.
can hit on that?
Oh, absolutely. I want to give the other person some time to ask their question as well. But before I do, I just want one more question.
Cool.
So it doesn't even correlate to anything about the book. But how old are you guys, by the way? Just I don't know if you don't mind saying how old are you guys, because you guys are like young.
I'm
29. Okay.
22 this month, and then Brendan is Brendan. How old are you? 16?
21. I'm the baby.
21. Sorry, he's young. I forgot.
Old ass. Yeah, 21.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at this age, I mean, you are already thinking about doing this and, combating just the writing world and taking on many things in many fashions. I think that's just a role model to me. So I just want to let you know, you guys are role models just within 33 minutes of meeting you guys. You guys are like,
It's been a pleasure.
like I see youth entrepreneurs. Like I look up to you guys. So already within 33 minutes. So
Well, thank you for
appreciate
that.
it.
Thank you for the question.
Absolutely.
Stay on because we're gonna hit more about like the post-publishing process, and hopefully that'll provide more details. But we appreciate you being on. Thanks
Sure.
for the question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm seeing some really good questions in the chat. So maybe we can go ahead and hit these before we get, because I mean I'd rather hit these rather than the ones we had.
Absolutely.
So Jasma, thank you for putting a question in here. So I see you said, did you guys go about figuring? How did you guys go about figuring out how to structure your book chapter wise? I have an idea and topics I'd like to cover, but I don't know how to structure it. Great question.
Perfect. You want to take leader?
Yeah. So I would say that first and foremost, I think the process when me and Brandon were planning for this, the way we had organized the process first and foremost was starting with the inspiration and outlining process, and I think that's super important before you even start writing anything, is to organize your thoughts in terms of how this book will be formatted. So for me, when I first got the idea, I was going into the notes app and sort of just structuring the process of thought that I wanted the book to go through. So in terms of the overall theme of the book, what the different chapter topics would be, how many chapters I wanted there to be, but not just the chapter topics, but also organizing how the progression of those chapters would be, so that sort of the experience of the readers going through the book makes sense and is seamless and doesn't feel interrupted and things like that. So I think, in my opinion, the best thing to do is try to outline it as much as possible. It doesn't have to be, an in-depth outline of what all is going to be in the chapter yet, but I think organizing that flow of thought and maybe even showing it to, a few trusted friends or something like that to get their opinion, to make sure that, it feels like it's flowing in a way that makes sense.
Absolutely.
What would you say, Brandon? I'd love to hear what you got to say.
Like going back to like before you even start writing the book, right? You have your ideas, like you said. Like what I did, I knew what I wanted to talk about. I knew kind of like the timeline in my head. So it was really just, all right, let me just jot down as many ideas as I can. And I was as detailed as possible. And I just started writing in kind of like chronological order. Like you said, it's a book, it's a story, fictional, non-fictional. So you're kind of writing as detailed as possible your ideas for that story. And like you said, seeing if it flows. I had to change my layout of that sheet throughout the process. So I was like, maybe this makes sense going here, bring something down. But like in general, you're before you even write the book, you have your outline sheet. You just want to write down as many ideas that are in your head as possible and be really detailed. And then talk to people to see if the flow is right, if it chronologically makes sense. And that I think that will work best.
Yeah, and one last thing on that, I think another way to try to make sure it flows, like you were saying, Brandon, is to as much as possible try to pitch yourself in the reader's
Yeah,
uh, perspective. So I think it's beneficial to, as you're writing the book and outlining it, to also think about it as a reader and to think about it from people from different perspectives,
yeah,
thinking about, okay, once I got through this chapter, and based on the type of motivations that would lead me to this book in the first place, after this chapter, what would I be looking for next? If I was someone who would be motivated to buy this book, what would be the next step after this? And I think that, putting yourself in their shoes and guiding it from that way instead of just from your perspective as a writer could help it flow a little better as well.
100%.
So thank you for that question.
That's a good one.
I saw you submitted 2 questions, so we'll come back to the second one. But I want to get to another question that says, how did you find someone to print and edit for you? I think that's a really good one as
Yeah.
well. You want to start on that one?
Yeah. So as far as editing, we talked about that. It's Fiverr. Was it FIVRR?
Yeah.
It's an app, so definitely make an account there. There are thousands of editors, people looking for work, so definitely check them out. All reasonably priced, so it's a good site. As far as the publishing process, we use Digipod, and you referred me to them.
Yeah,
It's
I'll put the link in the bio.
Yeah, he's gonna put the link in there for anyone interested. DIGGY Pod, and they literally handle everything as from printing, manufacturing of it, putting gloss on the covers, shipping it out to you. They handle everything. It's a seamless process. So definitely recommend Digipod for that.
Yeah, I don't even have anything to add on that one. I would say that Digipod is really, I think it doesn't get any better than that. You do
Yeah,
it all online, shows up at your house pretty quickly. So that's what I would say. Um, so I see some questions in the Q&A one as well. So I see Michelle submitted a question. How did you guys overcome the nights when you go to sleep late, but still be productive and proactive the following day? That's a great question.
girl. Let me tell you,
Interesting
man.
as an athlete as well.
Well, yeah. So I guess I run track and field. And so it was rough, but it's doable. Like we had 5 a.m. practices every morning, which wasn't fun, but we had them. And so I kind of organized my writing schedule around my day. And so, like I said, I tend to like writing at night, but I also know reasonably what's in my limits. So if I have practice in the morning, class throughout the day, before I start my homework, I may work on the chapter. After I finish my homework, I may work on some more of the chapter till maybe 12 o'clock, and then get 6 hours of sleep or so. So I think that before you even write the book, you know your schedule already. You have to kind of be comfortable with being uncomfortable in that situation and knowing that you're going to be tired some days and you're just going to have to push through. It's not easy, but it's definitely worth it if that helps.
Yeah, I agree. So I did not have 5 a.m. practice, thank
Lucky.
God. But I think I always kind of had to keep in mind that at this point in my life, writing wasn't the only, um, responsibility. And to be honest, it wasn't the main responsibility. There was still classwork I had to do, 9 a.m. class to be at
Yeah.
the next day. So I think it's important to, to have a writing outline, but to also have a writing schedule that fits in to the schedule of your life in general.
Yeah.
And, prioritize that for whatever that means to you. For me, handling my business at school and working on YED was the first priority, and writing had to fit in between that because you know school was, if I wasn't taking care of business at school, there would be a lot of other problems that make
Yeah,
things worse. So I think it's important to just keep those priorities straight, even while working on something that you're really passionate about.
know your limits too.
Yeah.
Know your limits.
Uh,
Uh,
so I see Promise put in a question here, which I think is a great question. Um, he says, did either of you do any external research on certain topics or content before you started or while you were writing? If so, how did that work? Um, what would you say? Did you have to do that in your process at all, Brandon?
Absolutely. Yeah, even though I was writing primarily from my standpoint, there were a lot of topics that I wanted to touch on, such as the art of pivoting. I also use references from some professional athletes. And so I did a lot of deep diving into, like, I wanted to talk on the art of pivoting. I knew what that meant to me, but I wanted a more technical definition of it. So I literally did like a whole 4 hours of research one night just on like what is pivoting to the average person? What does it mean? How do they relate to it? What does it mean in your daily life? Um, and so definitely did a lot of external research. I feel like whether you're writing fictional, nonfictional, whatever, it's crucial to do external research, kind of for the sake of your customer, your audience. And every time you do external research, you want to make sure that you include it in your book. So in the back of my page, I have a notes section where I have every external, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but like link or article,
Stuff like that.
yeah, citations. Just like you do in like school. I make sure I have citations in the back of the book, so I was giving credit where credit was due.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that um, so from my perspective, I thought it would be good to have maybe not external research, but I definitely wanted to go to external thought leaders just so to make sure the thoughts I was having. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your book, and I think whatever your opinion is, it's your opportunity to share it. So it doesn't have to necessarily, always be the only right answer. I think there's value in it being your answer and your perspective, but I think that it's also necessary to have a diverse point of view represented in your work as well. So that's what I wanted to do. So for that reason, my way of doing that research was going to um, entrepreneurial experts and thought leaders that I thought could provide value in the different chapters. So some of the people I sat down with were the vice dean of Wharton at the time, a woman named Lori Rosenkopf, and we had like a 2-hour discussion about topics in the book. And part of her story is included in one of the chapters, and I think she added a lot more depth and just a different perspective to it. I interviewed an entrepreneur of a company called The Gathering Spot that's based here in Atlanta and also in DC. And specifically for the entrepreneurship chapter, he added just a ton more perspective that honestly I couldn't tap into because he's had experience that I couldn't. And even I interviewed my dad as well, who's had amazing experience as an entrepreneur. And I think his story added a lot more flavor to resonate with people as well. So I think that different types of research are really valuable, whether it's academic sources or whether it's just interviews and talking with experts or people who can provide different insight than you have. But I think that's super important.
I agree.
So I saw Jasmine put in a question that I didn't want to make sure I don't skip over that one. So she has said, Brandon, you spoke about sticking to your schedule to meet your deadline. Can you talk about if you ever strayed from it and how you adapted when you did?
So first off, great question. Second off, I never strayed from my deadline. Um, I was afraid to. Like I was afraid, like if I strayed from my schedule, I was afraid I would just get off track. And so I think that goes hand in hand with being disciplined. Like I set my own deadline for myself. So I said I want to write a chapter a week, period. So as soon as that first week went by and I finished a chapter on time, I was like, damn, I can actually do this. And so it became easier and easier as the weeks went on to write a chapter a week. Um, speaking of that, after I finished that initial draft and I took it to my editor, she was like, "All right, Brandon, you're gonna have to edit like 50 pages." And I'm like, oh shit. So it's like I had to go back and really stick to my P's and my Q's and stay on that schedule. Cause I had and we could talk about this, Jordan, setting a date for when you want to have your book published.
Right.
So I knew I wanted my book to be published in the beginning of 2020. So I ended up publishing it February 23rd. And so, like I said, sticking to my schedule was the only way I could ensure that my book came out on date. If you do stray from your schedule, I'd say don't make it a habit. You want to try to keep yourself as disciplined as possible, because writing a book it's a lot of work, just like schoolwork, and you just want to make sure you stay on top of it so you don't fall behind.
Yeah, I agree. I think whatever techniques you can do to stick to that schedule, the better, because I think writing a book most times is something that if you don't have things to keep you accountable, kind of tends to be put on the back burner a lot, especially when you have school, when you have work.
Yeah.
It's something that I've seen a lot of people just say, okay, I'll do it eventually, and then 5 years later, you're still working on that. You still haven't even started. So I think for me personally, I was I had a set schedule, and I think that I actually ended up being able to finish earlier than the schedule. And I think that on that note, it's important to be flexible with it. Like even
Yeah.
if it means being postponed a little bit, um, just having the ability to adapt. Or if you're finishing early and the opportunity seems like it's better to, pit it out a little earlier than you initially wanted to, just being able to read the environment and adapt if it's necessary. But on that topic, Brandon, you had said something really important that I think we had wanted to talk about before, which was timing
Yeah.
of publishing. Um, and I think that relates to Jasmine's question as well. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? And then Justin put in a great question in the Q&A that I think we can hit after.
Yeah. So as far as like picking a date.
Yeah, picking a
Yeah.
date or I guess finding the right timing for when you want to release it. Was that something that was on your mind?
Yeah, so since I feel like that goes kind of with knowing your audience and knowing what your book's about. So I knew my book along the lines of motivation, um, like resolution, purpose, right? So I thought if I publish it and put out in the world early in the new year, January 1st, everyone has their New Year resolutions. I'm gonna lose 50 pounds. I'm gonna go to the gym, blah blah blah. So I'm like, my book being a motivational book, I thought early, you know, early January, February was the perfect time because people were still in that kind of motivational, I got to do this mindset. That was for me. And that's because I knew my audience being college students, and like the age demographic, I knew what they were about. So in timing when you want to publish your book, it's important to know your audience, know their habits. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. One thing I'll add is I think for me, timing wise, at this point in my life, I was just trying to find the time where I felt like I could capture the various audiences in the different parts of my life. You
Mhm.
know, I was in school in Philly, but from Atlanta and have a lot of family down here and church family. So in wanting to, release and have a launch event, I was just trying to find the right time to really release this to both groups. So initially I was planning on doing the summer, but I thought it would be better to do, right before school started, right before going back, so that I could have an event in Atlanta before I left home with all my family and friends there. And then also have a launch event in Philly, with everybody from school and stuff like that. So I think that's something important to keep in mind as well, is keeping in mind where you will physically be when the book launches, um, just so you can schedule any in-person events and making sure that wherever your real supporters are and your home base, you can make sure that they can access it accordingly.
I agree.
So thanks for that question.
That's a good one.
Real quick, I saw Justin had put in a question about tips about the process of getting into print. And I know we had talked about Digipod and stuff like that, but maybe any tips for specifically using Digipod or any roadblocks in the process of using it that might be good to highlight in your perspective?
I would say the only thing that I would watch out for is, like any company, they charge for everything.
I was gonna say that.
They charge for everything. So know what you need, know what you don't need. I was thinking about putting that extra, extra little gloss on my book, make it shine more, make it pop. Then I saw
Gloss
that,
money?
huh?
You got gloss money?
I don't got no gloss money. I don't got gloss money. Gloss money is a lot of money. That's a couple $100 for the extra gloss, for auto copy. So I'm like, you know what? My readers don't really need that gloss. They got the book, they'll read it. So they charge for everything. So know what you need, and what you don't necessarily need, and play within your budget.
Yeah, I think you read my mind. My only advice would be before you go to Digipod or any other printing company, double check your files as far as your cover design files, your
Yeah,
actual book files, and make sure that they adhere to the guidelines, because every time you have to resubmit or change to your cover design, they're going to charge you. And it might seem like only a $20, $30 charge, but after 5 or 6
it's
resubmissions,
45. They charge you.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
$45.
it's 45. So when you submit your stuff, make sure everything is correct the first time, because you will pay $45 to have to do it all over again. They
Yeah,
charge you. Yeah,
and it adds up quick. So
yeah.
that's something to definitely keep in mind. Um, so James Seaton submitted a great question saying, how did you know when your book was ready to go? And how did you face your self-doubt and criticism?
You getting deep on me,
I
James.
like that
Good
question.
question. Um, Sheesh. Alright, I'll start with that one because with my book, first off, how did I know I was ready to go? When I finished writing it, well, when I assumed I finished writing it, I had to have read it over at least 40 times. And I feel like after that, once you read it over again and again and again, you pick up on little things, and then once you start realizing there's nothing else to pick up on, like, oh man, this is it. You feel me? You get to the end of that book, you start smiling, like, yeah, this is a finished product. So I would say I knew it was ready to go because I constantly was reading it over and revising it throughout the entire process, to where I didn't think I needed to do anymore, or I couldn't do anymore. Um, and then the self doubt and criticism, like with my book, it was extremely personal. It is extremely personal. I talk about everything I went through, like I said, depression, suicide, etc. I lay it all out in the book. And so in writing that, there were times where I had to second guess myself, and I'm like, damn, do I really feel comfortable being vulnerable with my audience? Do I think they're gonna judge me? How do I think they're gonna react? Are they gonna look at me differently? And it really came down to me being comfortable with knowing who I am now in my life and what I'm about, um, to the point where I no longer doubted myself. So I would say, in terms of facing self doubt and criticism, when writing about anything, believing in yourself and your product first before anything else. And I told myself, I'm gonna write this book. I'm gonna put it out there. As long as one person buys it, I know that I've affected someone's life and I've made a difference in someone's life. If one person reads this and is going through a mental battle, if one person reads this and is finding their passion now, I've achieved my goal. So being self-confident in yourself and your product is the first step to putting out great work.
I think that's a great answer. And I think this is such a great question.
Yeah.
And I resonate with it so much because, like what you said, a lot of my book is very personal. And I think a lot of people thought from, I guess, from stuff I've been involved in before, that the book would mostly be about entrepreneurship and business. And I don't think a lot of people realize that mostly it's not about, like, there's a chapter on entrepreneurship, but most of the book isn't. A lot of it is like lessons from life and just personal experiences and personal failures. And it's very vulnerable. So I definitely had a moment, like you said, Brandon, where I finished, but I was like, man, I don't, it's a very vulnerable experience. I don't know if I want
Yeah.
to, share like that. And on top of that, how will people judge? Oh, he's writing a book. That's not necessarily the cool thing to do. Like, oh, it's nerdy, whatever, like that. I had those thoughts as well. And I think the turning point was just having a moment where your ego gets taken out of it, in terms of just remembering that this actually isn't about me in the first place. Like that's not the main goal.
Absolutely.
There's side benefits where I think that if you do good work and you focus on the main thing, that good things come to you. You make money, you get sales, you get attention, whatever it may be. But the core reason why I started this project was to provide value to other people and
Exactly.
help them through their process. So I think it just took getting back to that main core passion and what was the reason for getting into this in the first place. And I think that frees you up a little bit from the self-doubt.
Yeah. If your purpose is genuine, man, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Period. Period. That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's see what else we have in the chat. Also, thank you for the great questions. If anybody wants to get unmuted and just ask it, just click the raise hand button.
Y'all can talk. We don't bite.
Yeah, I don't at least. And then we can unmute you in here. So Alyssa asked a question. First of all, Alyssa, thanks for joining. Hope you're doing well. Her process was, how did you go about being your own critic, and how many external people did you get to read it for you, and how did you filter other people's advice and determine whether or not to take it? Great question.
Y'all are coming with the heat, man.
That's a good question.
All right. So for me, I didn't let a lot of people read my book before I published it. I didn't want that many opinions. For that exact reason that you stated, I didn't want a bunch of outside opinions coming in and clouding my judgment, and confusing me with who I thought I was. So I let my mother read it just because I didn't have a choice. She kind of forced me to. So she read it. And then it's really just my mother, myself, and my editor. And that was it. Everything else was just me. And that's kind of how I liked it.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I was kind of very protective of it, especially during the process.
Yeah.
The people I think I let read it were my mother, my sister, my dad as well. I sent it to him. I don't know if he read it. And the editor as well. So probably just those 4 people. For the same reason, I kind of just I didn't want my perspective to get too skewed through it as in terms of like the actual content. I just really wanted to change like overall issues, grammatical stuff, structuring and stuff like that. But I really loved the part of Alyssa's questions when she said, how did you filter out other people's advice and determine whether or not to take it? Because I think that's very important. And so I had that sort of experience with the editor where I took her grammatical changes and stuff like that, but she also had the advice that she thought that, well, so in my book, there's also spiritual elements to it as well, and talking about my faith and experiences with that. And she thought that maybe it would be better to, brand the book as that overall, or I guess, or take the faith part out a little bit if it wasn't going to be a part of the core branding. And I appreciated the input, but I decided not to take it because I felt like it was just a part of the story and part of my perspective. Yeah. And I didn't really, it was just part of the life I was writing as. I didn't think it needed to be labeled as a Christian book and put under that belt. I think it was just a part of the process. So I think it took being able to take the feedback, analyze it, and think whether it's actually useful to use, and then just act on what you think is the best.
And on that point, no one knows your story better than you. No one knows what you want to write about better than you. So I recommend not having a lot of people read your work before you have the right people read your work. Quality over quantity. The right people, but not a lot of people. And you know your story, so feel confident in what you have written. Like he said, listen to other people, but don't always, if you need to initiate their advice, trust yourself.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into Reginald's question as well. He asked, was it beneficial and helpful to get input from family members and friends while writing the chapters? And I would say for me it was, but at family at least, but I think it depends on what you're writing about as well. Because I did write about some of my family members, but I was writing about them in a good way. Yeah. Sometimes the stories might not be like that. So I think it's just
It's true.
Brandon put it right in terms of, knowing the right people to get it from, knowing who will give you the right types of constructive feedback without making changes that aren't true to you.
Yeah. With me, because I was writing about something so personal, my parents thought it was best I not bring any of that stuff up at all, because they're like, we don't want people to look at you, in a negative way because you're talking about all this dark stuff.
Yeah.
And so I butted heads with my parents throughout the entire writing process. Love them to death, and I know they're just looking out for me, but they didn't want me to put that stuff out in the world. But I knew that for me, I needed to tell my story that way. So that other people going through it could relate to it. So pick and choose.
That boy spitting.
Spitting.
Thank you guys for those questions. So I saw Taylor submitted a question, and Isaiah, I see you got your hand raised, so we're gonna bring you back here in a second. But Taylor's question was, how did each of you go about getting your book to consumers? Are you both
Important.
selling them to the buyer or using a platform such as Amazon? This is something we were going to hit as well. So that's a great question.
So I think we're doing the same method, but for me, I'm on Squarespace. I mail them. Sorry, I mail them myself. I package them myself. I do handwriting on them. I write in every book myself, and I just ship it. So check this. Originally, I was shipping it through UPS, and they were trying to charge me $9 per copy to ship them, and I'm like, I charge what, 14? You trying to charge me $9? I did the math. I'm like, I don't like those numbers, and so I started using the post office, and I think they only charge like between $2 to $4 per package. So I think finding the cheapest option is definitely the route to go. I recommend the post office. Stay away from UPS at all costs. That's what worked for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I do the same. I'm pretty sure, at least here in Georgia, USPS media mail is like $2 as long as you tell them like it's a book. So I think that's always probably the best option to go, and you can get tracking on it and everything like that. In terms of how did we get them to consumers, we both sell through our online site with Squarespace. Pretty much, I would sure Brandon would agree, just to be able to control the whole process, keep more of the profits. And it's more of like I've always seen it as more of a direct relationship rather than leading people to Amazon. But I'd also do for the ebook, I do have it on Amazon, but I try to lead people more to the print book.
I highly recommend making your own website. After you write your book, make your own website, because you can brand it however you want. You feel me? Like that's all you. You can pick the color scheme, the images, make it look all pretty and stuff, and make it related to your brand and what the book's about. People are gonna be more inclined to purchase from you when they see it on a website that kind of displays what you're about. So I definitely recommend making a website and using the post office for sure.
Another great question. So let's see if Isaiah still has is still on. Let's try to bring him in here. Isaiah, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
What's good? What's good? Welcome back in. We missed you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I have a kind of a two-parter question. My first question is kind of loaded, but bear with me. So we have two hemispheres on our brains, right? We have the right hemisphere and we have the left hemisphere. And the right hemisphere tends to be more creative, and then the left tends to be more like specific, like detailed and going back to editing. During your first process of drafting your book, that's when you're trying to put down your message. You're trying to put down what you want to say, because basically it's just laying it out so you can go back and edit it. But it tends to get hard, or tends to be hard when you're writing and you're always like self-editing yourself when you're going through that first draft. How did you kind of stay disciplined on just getting the message out first instead of just trying to go back and reshift it and revert it? Because if you're doing that, it kind of becomes even harder, or makes it even more of a longer process to do so. So how did you just kind of stay away from the editing process of yourself for the first draft?
Discipline. It comes back, like you will realize you are way more disciplined than you give yourself credit for in this writing process. For me personally, I had set goals in mind. I knew my topic. I knew what I wanted to write on, And I keep bringing it back to before you even start writing your book, having that sheet where you jot down every crazy kooky idea that comes in your head, and organizing it in that sheet. So then when it comes time to write your book, you are literally just going off of that sheet in an organized manner. And so I think getting all those kind of creative ideas, as well as the detail oriented ideas out on a sheet of paper first before you start writing, is a pivotal part of the process.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree with what you said. I think when you're writing that first draft, that's not the time to have your editing hat on. I think if you do, it kind of limits the ideas you get on paper in the first place, to be honest. So my perspective was, when I'm writing, this first draft, to just be writing, not think about editing. It might not even fully make sense yet, but I think it's just beneficial to let your ideas flow that first time in the way that they organically do. And then once that's finished, and when it's time to go back to editing, then you can put on the editing hat, and make those changes. And I think that's something that made it easier for me, was not even really giving myself the editor role in this project. So I hired someone else to be the editor for it, and I left that job to be theirs. And then when they gave me advice or changes to review, I reviewed them and made edits and changes. But I was just focusing on handling the writing, handling that process, so I didn't have to be bogged down with thinking about the editing or trying to do two things at once, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the second part of that first question was, so I kind of edged back to not letting too many people read your material. I found when I wrote my personal statement, I'm still in high school, but I wrote my personal statement for college, and I used to ask so many teachers to read my personal statement. But what happened was, it became more of their voices instead of mine. And I think, do you think it's wise to just get at least 2 or 3 college professors, or even just 1 or 2, just to read your material, those who are within that study? Because I know it becomes with this situation where if you let too many people look over your material, it becomes their voices instead of your own. I mean, how do you feel about that logic? Because that's what I'm thinking when I
That's
get
definitely
go into college. Yeah.
Definitely,
So
first, very mature for your age. Kudos to you.
I was about to say the same thing.
He was older. I thought you was college.
Appreciate it.
Oh,
I know.
cool.
I
Keep saying quality over quantity, man. That's what it comes down to. You don't need 10, 15 people reading over your work. Find a good 2, even a good 1 to 2, maybe 3 people at most to look over your work. But remember to stay true to your voice, because it is your work, and no one knows you better than you know you.
I agree. The thing that always comes in my mind is never to value someone else's opinion more than your own. And I think that a lot of times in creative processes like this, we go to other people that we think are the experts, and even when it's our personal lives, we do that too, which is important, and their opinion matters, but it doesn't matter more than your opinion and your perspective as well. And I think it's very important to understand the worth of your own opinion, because nobody else has your perspective or your experiences. And just like Brandon said, nobody knows your story better than you do. So I think it's good to talk to professors, to talk to experts, but don't let that discredit your experiences or the unique perspective that you have as well. Especially as a high school student, as someone very young, I think it's easy to neglect your own, opinion sometimes, but I would encourage you not to do that, because there's a beauty and there's something special about your perspective and your experience at being such a young age.
Sure.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that insight. And I am graduating this year, hopefully sometime. I'll get my diploma. Hopefully they will. Yeah. So I'm heading off to California, and that's the kind of, like, I was thinking about, how am I going to get editors or college professors to look at my work? Should it be this many, or should it be this many looking at it? And I just made the idea in my head of, like, taking the wisdom that I learned from my personal statement and applying it to what I'm going to do there. And I'm just thinking just at least 2 or 3 professors to look at it, because I don't want to, like, over do it, because then I'm going to become bogged in. I'm going to start revamping and reconstructing. And
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
Hey, well, you got me excited by sharing your story. So please keep both of us updated on it. We're excited to see the final project and just about your college journey as well. We're wishing you the
Best of
best.
luck to you,
Absolutely.
man. Yeah, definitely reach out.
Thank you. Oh, absolutely. I'll definitely stay connected, because I might have some questions since I'm still young and I'm trying to figure out this whole thing.
Always
cool.
happen. Thanks for the
Yeah.
question. Okay, so that was awesome. I didn't know he was in high school. Shout out to Isaiah.
Yeah.
So if anybody has any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Brandon, another thing, as we're winding down on time, I think it would be cool to talk about the process after the book was published, as far as after the book was launched and it's printed. What were the next steps for your process, and how did you keep securing those sales after that initial hype is gone and just back to normal?
I feel like that the after process is just as important as the writing process. A lot of people, they'll put their all into writing it, and then it's published, and then it's just like, oh, I'm done. People are just gonna automatically buy it. It don't work like that. You have to constantly be promoting, constantly be doing it. Like you said, speaking engagements. That's something me and Jordan are really big on. In-person speaking engagements. I've done a lot of those until quarantine, of course. And so like being able to meet with people physically, convey my passion for my project, and show them I'm serious about it. Leads to more people buying it because they want to read about my story. So definitely speaking engagements, doing little webinars like this, collaborating with other writers and other creatives is a great way to get your message out to people who aren't in your network. And also, like with our original post, like when I posted on February 23rd, I just told everyone about it. I'm not a shy person. I was in anyone's DM that I saw was an athlete, anything with mental health that I saw was a college student. If I saw you and I related to you in one way, I was DMing you in a heartbeat, and we were having a conversation. And I was trying to get you to read my book. So I just be resilient about it. At least for me, that's kind of what worked for me, and not limiting yourself on the kinds of people you reach out to.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is super important because, like you said, people assume that once the book is launched and printed, everything's just smooth sailing from there, and that is not the case. And I think it can be a really disappointing moment for a lot of authors when they put so much time in, but neglected creating strategies for long-term growth sales after the print date. So I think that's something that needs to be focused on, like maybe during the editing and printing process, to really have a strategy for the long term of how you're going to continue reaching people. And I agree with what you said. I think speaking engagements for authors has got to be one of the best ones. Like we had said earlier, just having that personal touch with people, allowing them to be able to feel your energy in person and hear your story. I don't think anything really compares with that. And also, I think social media content and blogs has been something that's really good for me. I've sort of been in the realm of doing consistent blogs and social media content from snippets of the book that keep it top of mind for people, that might give them reminders or just give them a cue to check out the book and go to the website and purchase it. So I think that helps a lot. And what you said is big in terms of collaborating with other brands, but especially other authors. And I think doing things like this to expand your network, yes, and meet some other really dope individuals, but also to, to be able to access other people's network as well and share your book and your products with other people. I think it's extremely important because eventually you're gonna reach your whole network or your whole social media following, and then you have to ask yourself what's next.
Exactly. Yeah. So just be resilient and stay on top of it. Honestly, that's the best thing to do. Don't let up.
So it's looking like I don't think we have any more questions. If we do, you guys can type them in the chat real quick. But I just want to say I appreciated everybody that asked questions. These were great questions. Maybe we can end, Brandon, with just providing links or information for social media for acquiring both of our books. If you're interested, I'll let you start.
Yeah. So I put both of our websites and both our Instagram handles in the chat box. So definitely check out the website. If you have any other questions, please reach out to either one of us via DM. I'm extremely responsive. And like I want to be a part of your journey. I want to help you guys, you know, be successful in bringing your book from an idea to a creation. So please, like, reach out. I'm here for you guys. I'll give you my number. We can always talk for sure.
Yes, and I agree with what Brandon said. I'm always willing to talk and would love to hear about you guys' ideas. April, I saw your comment. She asked, how can we access this recording? We are streaming live on YouTube right now, and we're going to post this video on our YouTube page once this is done as well. So you guys should be able to access it from there. And we'll also have it recorded. So we'll try to send a link or the YouTube link to everybody's email that signed up as well. So with that, just want to say thank you to everybody for joining. We got some value. And hopefully we'll talk to you guys soon.